One of the most common causes of pain in relationships is we think that we can change other people. That we can, if I just yell enough, if I hit enough, if I scold enough, or if I beg enough, or if I sulk enough. We all have different ways that we go about trying to change the people in our relationships, but it actually never works. I've never heard of anyone who changed because they got scolded, who changed because they got criticized, who changed because they got condemned or hit. What we get is basic behavior modification. So yes, if every time your child leaves his jacket on the floor, you shout at him or beat him, yes, of course, he'll learn to hang up his jacket. But that's just, it's basic behavior modification. That's not what we're looking for in our relationships. The stuff that hurts us in relationships is not a jacket on the floor. What hurts us is how people treat us. Do they love us? Do they not act like they love us? Do they care for us? Do they not act like they care for us? Do they do the things that make us feel good? Do they not do the things that make us feel good? Do they do what we want them to do? Do they not do what we want them to do? This is the stuff that hurts us, and what hurts us, again, is not the behavior. It's on a deeper level. So if you say, well, it really hurts me that my husband doesn't help with the dishes. It's not the behavior. It's when he doesn't help with the dishes, what it means is that he doesn't love me, or it means that he doesn't care, or it means that he takes me for granted. It really hurts me that my child doesn't clean up their room. Why? It's not the clothes on the floor, it's what it symbolizes. It means to us, my child doesn't care. I get up every day, I go to work to earn money. I use that money to buy my child nice clothing, and then they just dump it on the floor. It means they don't care. And so it's important, first of all, for us to understand that what we're really striving for in our relationships is not the external behavior. It's the internal emotion that guides the behavior. And we know that because when your child cleans up just because you've yelled at them, or when you convince someone to help you with the dishes, or someone finally, you say, you never bring me flowers, finally they bring flowers. If you know that they've only done it because you've pressured, because you've condemned, because you've criticized, because you've cried, well, it's not satisfying. It doesn't give us what we're looking for. Then we say, well, you only did it because I begged you. You only did it because I yelled. You only did it because I told you to. What we want is that our loved ones should uppity up from within, act in the way we want them to. And that's an important place to start when we're talking about spirituality, because it's not in the behavior. If you yell, if you criticize, if you condemn, if you beg enough, chances are you could convince your loved one, the husband in this case, to spend 5 minutes a day sitting next to you while you pray or meditate. You could convince them to put maybe tilak on the image of God. You could convince them maybe to do some japa. But that's not what we want. We're not looking for behavior modification. When we say, my husband isn't spiritual, what it means is that he's not on this path. And it's very important to remember in this case that nothing deep, nothing lasting is ever accomplished by criticism, by condemnation, by hurting, by withdrawing love, by sulking. That's what most of us do. Oh, well, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to sulk, or I won't be nice to you, or I will slap you, or I will, whatever my thing is. That doesn't change the people around us. We think it does. I've got to teach them a lesson. They have to know they can't get away with this. Never works. All it does is make them resent us. So when we really want something, like for our loved one to be on a spiritual path, what's important, first of all, to remember is we cannot force it. The other important thing to remember is there's no monopoly on what a spiritual path means. Those of us who meditate think that means a spiritual path. People who do elaborate puja, they sit in the mandir, they do all, very, very elaborate and detailed puja. To them, that's a spiritual path. People who do a lot of japa, a lot of malas, that's a spiritual path. People who go to temple and sit and they chant a lot of Hanuman Chalisas, that's a spiritual path. There's no monopoly. A spiritual path means living a life that is dedicated and committed to spirit. And what spirit is what connects us. What a spiritual life is just the opposite of a material life. A material life separates us. I'm an object, you're an object, we're separate. I'm going to use you to get what I want. Whether through lust, whether through greed, whether through using you to help me get ahead, you're a contact, you're a contract. You're going to get my name in somewhere. Or you're an object I have to remove from my path. You're standing in the way of my happiness. A spiritual life says no. I'm not an object, you're not an object. We're not separate. We're just different vehicles for the same spirit. What flows through me flows through you. And I'm dedicated to connecting to the spirit within me, to living my life as spirit, as consciousness, as divinity. And therefore I'm committed to seeing you as consciousness, as divinity. And no religion, no path, no sampradaya, no particular form has a monopoly on what that means. And I say this because many times we think that people around us are not spiritual because they don't do it the way that we do it. People say this about their children a lot. They don't like to come to temple. They won't put tilak on God. They won't do their malas. And then when we talk to the kids are committed to going to school to get a degree in environmental science so they can find out a solution to everything that's polluting our earth so that they can save the planet. Well, that sounds pretty spiritual. Or our kids are spending their weekends making burritos or sandwiches and taking them to the homeless people in the streets. That sounds pretty spiritual. Just because our loved ones, spouses, children, friends, aren't living what we think is the spiritual life, doesn't mean that they're not spiritual. And that's the second piece, is before we decide that they're not spiritual, we need to open our own vision of what does it mean? Am I just seeing them through my vision of what's right? Because that's what happens to us. We all get these very stuck notions of what's right. And then we try to fit other people into those notions. How to live, what to do, what our priorities should be, how we should spend our time. And with our loved ones, it's very difficult. Why doesn't he come to yoga with me? Why does he always want to go playing golf instead? As though somehow a yoga class had the monopoly on spirituality. As though somehow we knew what was right. And so it's very important to really open our eyes and understand, they may be spiritual, but not necessarily in the way that we think about it. And the last piece is to understand that spirituality is a magnet. And rather than focus on what other people are doing, we focus on ourselves. We commit ourselves to spirituality rather than being so focused on what other people are not doing. Rather than being so focused on judging them or worrying about them, we focus on our own spirituality. And then what happens is we literally become, as Pujya Swamiji says, a magnet of spirituality. And people around us, naturally and automatically, are drawn. They may not pray the way we pray, they may not do japa the way we do japa, they may not go to the temple we go to, but they're drawn to a spiritual life. And that's the most important thing. It shows them what peace is. It shows them what real love is. And that, in our relationships, is much more important than what we think is right or the behavior modification of our loved ones. It's to really exude spirituality, to really be a magnet of it and a source of it. Our family members, our friends, they'll automatically come around because they'll understand there's something there.